Okay, this is going to be everything you need to know to get Street Dog Sim up and running on your computer. Anything that you would need to do, parameterizations, ways that you would change and set up the model to your own particular system. So first thing that you're going to do is you're going to need to go to the Northwestern website and download NetLogo. If you just search for NetLogo, it'll be the first thing that pops up. It's a way to go and download this program. You're going to download just the regular NetLogo. NetLogo is an agent-based modeling software. It's used for lots and lots and lots and lots of systems. If you were to download it, you can see the most recent one has options for Mac, Windows, and Linux. I use a Windows, but it's going to work on any particular machine that you have options, that you have functioning. The way that you would run it is you'll just open NetLogo. So you can see that NetLogo is a blank software here. It's open. This is not just for Street Dog Sim, very obviously, but you'll need to actually open the .inlogo file. So what you'll need to do is you'll go to open and find it somewhere in whatever your documents are. I'm going to just use the recent file because it's the thing that I've just opened very recently. So this is Street Dog Sim. This is what Street Dog Sim looks like when you first open it up. Everything that is in a teal-ish box are going to be things that you can change. You can modify them to meet your particular systems. So what we're going to do is I'm going to zoom in a little bit here by hitting Control and then the plus symbol to make it bigger, just so you can see it a little bit easier in the actual video. You can set this system up to match your particular parameters and your particular dogs. The scheme that you're selecting is you have a couple options. Are you doing CNVR, so you're doing animal birth control or fertility control mechanisms targeting females? Are you targeting females and everybody and vaccinating, right? Are you just vaccinating? Are you killing everybody, or are you only killing females? So you have a lot of options in this. Things like adult survival rates is going to open up unless you change them and save them. But if you open it up, it's going to always be set to 70, but you can just change this if you have information about your particular dogs in your particular area that are going to say that, hey, you have a really low survival rate, maybe you want to crank these down. But generally, I'm operating off of most scenarios off of the Jaipur data that was put up by Jack Reese and Help and Suffering. So operating off the idea that 70% of adults and 30% of juveniles are going to make it year to year. Maybe it's going to be higher in your system. Maybe it's going to be lower. That's all for you to assess for yourself. When you're doing things like effort limiting, this is trying to get a more realistic setup where if you go and catch 99% of the dogs that are in a city, finding that last 1% is going to be a lot harder, right? So it has a system built in that makes it a little bit harder as you are getting more and more of your population caught. It's actually making it so that it's more difficult. You're actually able to do less captures every single month than you actually think that you're trying to be able to do, because it's a lot harder effort-wise to capture those 500 dogs at the 20th year than it was in month one, right? If you are doing things like running parameterizations to try and see how fast you recover, you can do bounce. If you're not, and you just want to see how things respond, it does not matter whether you have this on. And abandoning having the individuals that are abandoned onto the street being released from owned situations and being pushed back out onto a population that you're actually modeling. How many of those do you want to have vaccinated? Do you want to have none of them be vaccinated? Well, then you can leave this off. Or are you assuming that a lot of those owned dogs are going to be vaccinated? If you turn this on, it's going to, every time a dog gets released, it's going to have a probability of being a vaccinated dog that's being abandoned. But that is going to equal the current citywide vaccination rate. So if 20% of the city, then 20% of the time a dog is abandoned, it's going to be vaccinated. These are the parameters that you can change. What is the minimum age in months that you take? If you have no problem catching puppies and you do whatever your program scheme is, if you want to do puppies, then you would do for this. Most places that I've seen are going to be about 6 months. How many dogs are you going to capture is your target for this. So you can go all the range from like 8 dogs a month if you have a very small city to whatever you want it to be, right? 250 animals. When you do this model, it's best to have your management start a little bit after you actually start the model running, because you'd like to let the model what's called burn in, so that you'd like to let the population stabilize before you start changing and playing with things like sterilizing or killing animals. So when you want this management to start is generally about 5 years in, and then you say, okay, at month 60 we're going to have this management start, and I'm going to have it run for however long I want. When does this management end? If I only want to run this for 1 month, then I'm going to capture dogs from 60 to 61. But if I'm going to run it for another 5 years, then I'm going to run it for 120. If I want to run it for another 10 years of scheme, it's going to go to 180. If I want to run it for 15 years, then it would be 240. Right? So whatever you want for your particular system. Then you are going to be inputting, if you are using vaccine, it will use the duration of vaccine that you're going to put in. If you're using very, very low quality vaccine that maybe gives you like 6 months of protection or 12 months of protection, like some egg cultures. But if you're using stuff like IMRAB3 or something that gives you 3 years, then that would be 36 months vaccine protection. This is how long after you give that individual shot is it actually going to be protected. Then you're going to enter in your capacity, right? So this is going to be how many dogs, if nothing was done, how many dogs would be on the street in your city before you do any kind of management, killing, sterilizing, etc., rehoming projects. How many dogs would be in your city, right? 10,000, 1,000, what is the number? Things like releasing dogs and uncatchable. This releasing dogs has to do with abandonment. So like, if you don't have this flow of dogs into the city, then it can become a little bit, it looks like it's easier to actually go out and catch all of these dogs, when in reality you're getting a flow of animals from homes into the street. So having this be a number, low number, 5-10% is pretty reasonable. There's always going to be dogs in your city that are uncatchable. 5% is probably a low number if you have information that like there's a lot of uncatchable dogs because of either behavioral or they're living in the middle of a dump or something that just makes them impossible to walk up to. Then maybe you want to change this, but this is all up to you. So those are going to be all the things that you can change into this. But then you also have the options to go through and change the map mechanism and actually select a particular map. So what you'll want to do is, I'm going to shrink this back down again to show you the generic map. When you set up your model, you're going to click Setup, and then I've obviously set this up to be a generic map. That's why it's in this map mechanism as generic, right, where it's just creating this fake city, this city that has zones. The dark blue zone and the pink zone and the orange zone are all going to have different carrying capacities for dogs. So you can kind of see that kind of pink seems really high density and this brown seems kind of low density. So you can see the dogs with these little triangles on them. So for whatever reason, you can't actually you can't see many of these dogs because it's probably a lower density, right? So it creates these zones so that there's a little bit of randomness, a little bit of stochasticity. If I were to hit this button again, if I were to hit Setup again, the same sort of thing would run, and the model would change and give me a different generic city. It would be slightly different than it was before, right? And you can see that there. If you want to just do this, then it's very simple, and you can just go and run this city in the system however you'd like it to be done. As long as you set up and enter all your parameters, you can just click go, and it'll run and give you whatever your model's assessment of the system is going to be, right? So this case, we ran it, and it took 5 seconds or so, right? So that now we're seeing, hey, at about month 73, we started, well, hey, the management started at 60, and we started to see a decline pretty early on. And then after month 180, when we stopped doing management, then the population rebounded and came back right? So not terribly surprising. If I were to do this and do 800 dogs a month, and I set it up and hit go again, then we're going to see a very different thing. We're going to see the population crash much, much faster, much, much lower, and it's going to take a little bit longer for it to come back, right? So this is the kind of stuff that you can do and you can play with as you are entering in parameters. Before we get into how we would actually set up experiments and actually have this population kind of be tested over and over and over in a semi-rigorous kind of way, I want to talk about the other way that you can import maps, and you can import the actual appearance of whatever your city is. So you would actually change it down to a map mechanism as a custom import. In this custom import, I've already loaded in 2 maps just that you can see in this. And I've loaded in Lagos and Savannah Ket in Laos. So I've loaded in Lagos here, you see. And I can, if I were to hit set up again, and clear everything and then open it up, well, then here's what the appearance of Lagos is. And all of the brown that you see is outside of the city, or I think there's a big lake here in Lagos as well, right? So I set up another one. I've already imported another city in Laos, so you can see here's like the arrangement of this particular city. Well, how do you get this into the system? Well, the way that you would do that is you would actually need to produce a little tiny picture of this. And the way that that would work is you would go and find some map of some city in the world that you want to work in or that you're working in now. I'll go to Addis Ababa. So I'm just gonna, it doesn't have to actually be scaled at all because it's not important for the system, because it's actually a measure of density. It's not really a measure of, here's a good map. I've spent a lot of time staring at a map of Addis Ababa. So what you can do is you can copy this map, do whatever you want to get it. You can save it as a file. In this case, I'm just going to do a screenshot real quickly so you can actually see me screenshotting this, and now it's saved to my clipboard. And what I like to do is, if you have Photoshop, you can use Photoshop. I don't have money to pay for Photoshop, so I use a software called GIMP. It's just Photoshop, but free. I like free things. And so I've opened GIMP up here. Since I already have that in my clipboard, I'm just going to hit Control V to paste it. If I want to open that file up, if I saved it as a PNG or a JPEG or something, then it's not too terribly difficult. And what we need to do is we need to make the city of Addis Ababa turn all black and everything else that's not in the city turn all white. You can do this in lots of different ways. The ways that I find to be most easy is if I select by color. And so I've selected everything in here that is this yellow. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to switch it to change to be black. And then I'm going to select my paintbrush. And I could go through and like scribble this, but I don't really want to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my size and make it really big. So now it's really big. And now I have all of Addis Ababa being this kind of dark color shape. And I will go through and I'll select another color. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can actually select it well. And I'm going to select this and just do this same sort of thing. So I'm going to make kind of color this setup in a way that is going to be relatively clear. Other things that I can do is I can go through and like color this by hand. I don't really want to. That's not a good use of my time. So now that I have nothing selected, so I can color anything, I can go through and color this entire thing white like this, but that's a giant pain, right? I don't want to do that. So if I have this entire system to color, what I could just do is I could just select the kind of gray zone that you can see right here, and you can see that there's some like roads that are selected in this, so I have to get rid of those roads. But other than that, I can say, all right, I've selected everything that's outside of the city. So what I'll do is I will select and invert my selection. So I've selected everything that's not city right now. So what I'll do is I'll just invert it. And then now I have everything that is city selected. So I can go through here and actually color And now it is coloring the entire city, everything that I want it to be. So I'm going to just select this and turn everything white. However you want to do this, it's up to you. I want to change this to be white, not transparent. Live demo. I don't want to be transparent. I want it to be white. So I'm going to make this into a big giant picture and turn everything in the picture white. I could be really bothered by the fact that there's like these little roads, and if I want to do this for real, I would actually go in and like edit and change these and kind of erase these roads and rivers or whatever that's leading in and out of the city. But for our sake, it's actually probably not going to matter because the city is not going to be coded in that aggressively. So now what I want to do is I want to get rid of all of these kind of roads and and everything that's in this. So I could just do this fuzzy select. So I've kind of selected not by color anymore, but just by the shape on the outside. So I've selected and clicked in this area. So now I'm selecting everything that's not the city, and so I'm going to invert it again. So it's going to select everything inside the city. So select and invert. And then I'm going to go back to my color wheel and change it back to black. And then now I don't have to go through and kind of hand color all of these roads. I can just kind of fill all of them in. Right. So now you have a map of Addis Ababa, and this looks like Addis Ababa, the rough metropolitan area of Addis Ababa. Here it's actually the districts, but now you're going to export it out. I just tend to save stuff as PDFs, and I'm just going to put it in my desktop. I'm going to put Addis on my desktop, and so now I have exported this PNG out to my desktop, and I've done everything that I need to do with it, so I can just discard it and get rid of this. Now, in whatever the same file is that I actually have this NetLogo file in, I have it in my manuscripts file because I'm creating a model of it. So you can see this is the NetLogo file that I actually have opened up, and you can see here these other PNG files that I have previously done this work on, right? So here's what I've done for Lagos. I've made a little kind of map of Lagos. Here's what I've done for Savannah Ket, right? So this is the model that's actually importing the shadow of the city. And I'll go to my desktop and drag my Addis Ababa PNG in here. So now you can see the Addis Ababa PNG that we just made. Now, when I go into this code, what I'd want to do is I want to either I want to go in and select this new map. So I want to edit this and give myself a new option. So I'll add in Addis Ababa, and this is now going to be a new map that I'll probably package in with the rest of these other maps. So now I'm going to say, all right, I want to select Addis Ababa, and I'll go and hit set up. Problem is, it doesn't know what Addis Ababa's shape is supposed to be, right? So you can see that here, right? It doesn't know what Addis Ababa is supposed to be. So this is quite literally the only time that you'll need to go in and actually do any kind of, on the other tabs, you'll need to go in and actually edit things in the code. And so now I'm going to make this much, much bigger so you can actually see things. This is all the code that makes the model run and makes it go. It's written in a really easy to understand language, but I'm not expecting anybody to have to do that because why would you? And what we'll do is you're going to see here, you can see you have choices to set up a generic map mechanism or the custom import one. Since we're on the custom import one, we're going to go down to the procedures and go to that particular procedure. And you can say, hey, here's exactly what we had to do to import that Savannah Ket. So now we're just going to copy and paste it. And now, okay, I don't want it to be for Savannah Ket. I want it to be for Addis. Did I say Addis Ababa? I did. All right, so I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to make it so that it's actually the exact same thing that I just wrote, making sure that I capitalize things and uncapitalize them appropriately. And then I search for that particular PNG file, And I'm going to double check, make sure that I have that PNG file be the same. Yep, so here in that same folder that this NetLogo file is, I have a thing called addis.png. So I'm going to say, all right, addis.png. The last thing that you need to do is you need to resize the world, because this map is probably not going to come out looking right if I were just to open it now. If I were to hit setup, right? So it's going to look all wonky because it's set up for an arrangement of Savannah-Ket, which is kind of like it doesn't know what else there is on the outside of this, so it just kind of fills it in. So we need to actually change this window. We can do it manually by clicking on this, but we don't really want to do that every single time we open it. So we're going to go and resize this world. And what this is doing is it's actually showing us, okay, let's edit this view. How large should this picture be, right? Should it be for Savannah-Ket? We obviously had it set up for it to be 24 by 25 by 37 by 37, right on the size with the 0, 0 here in the center. When you go and produce a new file, if you want to resize it, you need to know how big this picture is. And so what you'll do is you'll find that picture, and I'll find addis.png. And then I can see here in my security details, hey, I've just made it, and it is 893 by 820 pixels. I could just put that in as the values, but that doesn't seem like a very good thing to do, because that would make it a really big map. So what I want to do is I'm just going to change it so that, and, have it here so we can see it too. Well, it's not going to do it. So if we go back into that code where we were back at this last section, I'm going to say, hey, if Addis Ababa is supposed to be, and I'm just copying it here so we can see it, 893 by 820, kind of pretty squarish, but you could see it was just me copying and pasting it, so it's not perfectly square. Well, if it's supposed to be 893 by 820, what we'll want to do is you could just enter this in as -0 to be your 0 value, and then a 890 to just lop off that last value, just round it, and then 0 and 82. Right, so now I should come up with, I've just done this all live, so it might not be perfect. There you go, pretty perfect. Right, so you can see it created a map that was about the same size. So now I have map of Addis Ababa, and I could go and say, all right, there's probably 40,000 dogs in Addis Ababa, and I want to catch 600 of them a month, and I want to do lethal control, and I want to do this and this and this, and I can change it to this particular parameterization, and it's going to spit out some value, right? So you can see it has this like road that I didn't quite delete, so it actually was kind of grumpy with me for keeping those roads in, but you can see the idea. So now I have saved this Addis Ababa, and you can kind of see now, just I'm going to add Addis Ababa in because I've already made it, why not? And now I can run experiments. The way that you would want to do this is you'd want to go to the tools section, and then a program submodel called behavior space. And behavior space is going to have a bunch of experiments already in here that I've already made. You can see the ones that I've already done for the manuscript that I'm producing for this model. I'm just going to keep those in there so you can actually have them. And what you'll need to do is you could hit new, and I'm going to do, here's a new for YouTube. And when you hit new, it's going to take all of these parameters that are already set and copy all of those. So you can see all of these setup values are all going to be here. And then you need to change what you're measuring. What I would suggest that you do is you could just go back into my other models and copy all of the outputs that I have. So there's going to be a document called an ODD that is all like the everything you possibly need to understand about this. If you want to go deep into it, and you can go back in and edit this, and now import this out. This is going to tell us everything that is possibly happening at the end of this. You'll want to set a time limit that is over whatever when does your management end. If you want to figure out when your population bounces back, right? So maybe I'll do it to 240. If management is ending at 180, add another 5 years on, see what's happening after at the end of that 5 years. If you run out of funding, if the system doesn't work, etc. And this is nice, right? It does two things. It gives me the option to edit repetitions. So maybe I want to run this 40 times. Maybe every time I hit setup, it's going to give me a different looking arrangement of these zones in ATIS. Maybe if I just did it one time and I kind of got a weird arrangement of the city that all had like the really high density setup was most of the city, well, maybe that's going to affect my outcomes. If I repeat it over and over and over again with that randomness built in, averages are going to help me get a better picture of what is truly actually likely to happen, not just some random outlier. So I could do this, and I could set up this and hit run. And when I hit run, it's going to give me the option. I generally put them out as tables instead of spreadsheets. It doesn't really matter. I generally don't update the view or update the plots and monitors because I don't want to look at that stuff while it's running. And I'll save it to wherever I want. I'll just save it to my desktop. And then if I don't get some problem, it will set up, right? It's okay to have these runtime errors. It's trying to do things by like dividing by 0 at the very beginning when a model is started. There's no dogs, so you can't divide by like the average age of dogs. But on the second month, it's going to have dogs that are there, so it's going to work. So don't worry about those sorts of errors. If I wanted to see how it's working, I could update these monitors and plots. It's just going to make it take longer to run. I don't particularly care to see this. It's just an experiment, so I'm going to abort it so that I don't actually have to sit here for it. But the nice thing about this, and the reason to use behavior space is not only do you not have to hit submit over and over and over again 40 times, is if you go back in to edit this, you can say, okay, maybe I don't really know how many dogs are going to be released, right? So if I'm not sure about a value, it's not good practice generally to say this is the number and not investigate other systems. So you can do things by saying like, okay, I want to test what happens if I'm way off and like there's 10 or 15%. If I give a space and then type the new number, what you look for is here on runs. When I hit OK, it's going to update it so that it's going to repeat those new values 40 times, taking it up to 120 runs. This is also where if I want to test different options, and I want to say, okay, if I capture 600 dogs a month versus if I capture 200 dogs a month, or any number that you want, right? 40, 400, whatever, right? If I want to do this, what it's going to actually do is it's going to give me outputs at the end of this for 120. And then if you start doing like multiple things, so if I like play with different types of vaccine or something, make sure that it's just numbers. If I play with different vaccines, then it's going to double what I just had. So the more you start to put in many different parameters, it can actually make this really, really big. But see, some of my model runs were over 1,000 different kinds of setups and parameterizations. But when you run out this and then you actually have this model going, it's going to give you a graph that looks an awful lot like this, right? So this is the stuff that was just running. It obviously didn't finish because I aborted it before. It has this header on it that you don't need. So the first thing that I generally do is I just delete that header. And then it gives you all of your setup parameterizations. And then when it gets to here, this is the actual data that you are caring about, the thing that it's spitting out for you. But this is the particular parameterization that we set up, everything that you imported into this. look at this data however you'd like. Maybe you only look at the end, see what it looks like. Maybe you want to actually track this as you go and plot this out over time. Maybe you care about the first 5 months. There's some critical window to achieve like a second round of funding or something like that, right? But this is all of the data. I have schemes set up, or I have outputs set up here at the top that we copied and pasted in that are going to be pretty much everything that I could imagine that you would want. It is very, very, very easy to add more. If someone were to want something, we could always add a new value in here. All of these outputs are explained in the ODD document, so you can see what this is and all of the setup that is going into this, right? So that is how you would open this, import a city, right? We just added Addis Ababa to the model. That is how you would set up an experiment and actually look at the results. From there, it just goes into what do you want to do with it? Do you want to test varying the amount of captures, the length of the intervention program? What's the most important thing for you to understand about this system? And it can be highly, highly customizable. So that is the model in a nutshell.